Topic number 2. Amnesty International's new report on @toxic Twitter. Is it possible?
Oh, what a wonderful name.
Yeah. Is it possible to reduce or eliminate cyberbullying, racist hate speech, and threats on social media platforms?
Is it
How
possible?
do we do that?
No.
I don't think it... May I start?
Go ahead, V.
May I start?
Okay.
Yes.
I think it is. If only Twitter and Facebook would simply take it seriously.
And they don't.
They don't. I have reported so many tweets which are so loaded with racism and sexism since I follow so many Native Americans. And literally, I would really have a look at these accounts who posted them and would report this specific tweet every single day for 3 or 4 days or even more. And I was not the only one, because this one tweet I'm thinking about right now, the person who it was directed at, she tweeted it out. She hashtagged it with settler collector. So literally, we were maybe 15 people who took care of it. And it took a week or longer until Twitter decided, oh, it's not okay that this tweet is not okay.
Or even that guy who went to Japan and went into the suicide forest and filmed it.
That idiot.
On YouTube
There's literally
Live,
signs saying, don't go into the forest. How dumb do you have to be to go into the forest?
YouTube didn't even take it down. How is that okay?
Yeah.
And he was literally making fun of it.
It was offensive on so many levels.
Or even as an example of my own, yesterday and the day before, I was bombarded by a guy who I had no idea was cyber stalking me. I've reported his Facebook profile to Facebook saying that it's harassing and he's pretending to be me, and his whole entire Facebook profile is negative, racist, homophobic crap. And they literally came back at me saying he's doing nothing wrong.
Yeah.
He's stalking me and has pictures of me up on his Facebook, but he's doing nothing wrong.
Yeah, it's like the tweet I was talking about. When a white person accuses a Native American woman of wanting, and sorry for the language, white dick and other stuff, then how is it not racist and misogynist? And I really had to report this tweet for 5 days, 5 consecutive days, and I wasn't the only one.
And I mean, who cares if she does?
So to respond.
Yeah.
And who cares if she does want white dick, for one? That's nobody's business but her own. And two,
exactly.
Why are you propagating 1900s racist bullshit? That's from not, and that's going back to people saying you're a squaw and you're fucking the white man. That is not okay.
Exactly. It's so racist and it's so misogynist, and Twitter took a week or longer until they said, oh yeah, it is.
Why are we going back to the 18th century? We are now in the 21st century here.
Yeah.
Well, it seems that my opinion is not going to be liked here.
Hashtags, you just think how can people...
What's your opinion, Joe?
Simple. That's you can't control humans, and they will always find a way around it. Plus, morality is incredibly subjective. So eventually you're just going to cause a lot more problems than you solve.
That is true. Morality is subjective.
Incredibly subjective.
I firmly am a believer that what my moral belief is not going to be the same as somebody else's, but there are lines that are crossed that shouldn't be crossed. Like, it shouldn't, and racism on all levels should be considered morally wrong.
Yeah.
Well, then what do you define as racism? Because there are also cases of genocides in Africa just because people are of a different tribe, but since they're of the same ethnicity, you can't really call it racism.
Well, I wouldn't... racism literally is abuse towards somebody that's not a race of your own. So genocide, yes, that would be what it is, but if they're the same race, then it can't be racism.
Yeah, but it's...
But you're... Okay, I want to put this, and I'm not trying to be ignorant or racist when I say this, but Joe, you're a Japanese American, right? Or an Asian American? Yeah. Okay, so would you say that the treatment of Asian Americans in the 1920s and how they treated Chinese people and Japanese people when they came to America to work but would not give them citizenship when they wanted it, or you had to apply to have citizenship as somebody who was related to somebody who already lived in the States just because you were Asian, is that okay?
Well, I mean, the second part of that's applying for citizenship even though you're related to someone in the U.S. I mean, that's just how it works here.
But that was specifically held for a long time for only, like, Asian American people.
I thought it was for more than just Asians. I thought it was just for anyone immigrating.
No, if you were white in certain periods of time, like in the early 1900s and the early 1800s, you could just land there and then claim American citizenship without applying for it. It only became...
Unless you were Irish.
Well,
then
right,
good luck. Like, yeah.
But, like, if you were from Canada and you were going over to the United States, like the Loyalists, because they were white, even though they were French, they didn't have to apply for citizenship. They just came over and said, okay, now I'm going to live in the United States and this is going to be my homeland. They didn't have to apply for citizenship, but like Asian Americans, they did have to. Or like, is it okay that we put Japanese Canadians in internment camps because we were afraid that they were going to bomb us because of what happened in Pearl Harbor? Like, that should have been and a lot of people stood up against that because intrinsically that's morally wrong. Ethically, that's wrong. You can't just say somebody's going to bomb you just because somebody from Japan came over and bombed Pearl Harbor. When they were hardworking Canadian people and living in Canada and working on the railroads and doing the jobs that normal white people didn't want to do.
Well, yeah, of course I think those things are racist. But there's so many other things that are not as clear-cut as that, which is what I would like to not have be prosecuted all the time on social media. Well, I mean, there's now a comedian in Scotland now almost going to prison because he made a joke with a pug saluting Hitler. I'd rather not have that be on every social media with people being that...
Well, I mean...
Well, frankly, uptight about things.
Freedom of expression, no, you shouldn't be able to, like, take somebody's freedom of expression. But but being that Hitler is a neo-Nazi and...
Well, Hitler's not a neo-Nazi, he's just a Nazi.
Well, he was a Nazi, but, like, Nazism has been a war crime. It's been stated as it was a war crime. That regime has already been offended as a war crime. So I think if you are making jokes about Hitler and what he did being okay, then you should, yes, be guilty of a hate crime.
In Austria, when you do that, you're going to be prosecuted and most likely to go to jail.
Yes, and that's one of my big criticisms of Austria. Because people aren't always supporting Hitler by making jokes about Hitler. In fact, I think if that person made the video in Germany, he would have been killed in Nazi Germany because he's...
But there are certain songs you're not allowed to sing and certain gestures you're not allowed to make and stuff like that. When you do that, you're going to be prosecuted. When somebody else sees you, he can sue you. He can bring you.
Well, then how far are you willing to? How far are you willing to take this on the internet? It's the internet.
I'm a fan of dark humor, but there is some dark humor that I think crosses a line, like rape humor or suicide humor or dead baby humor. That's not funny. Yeah. And it shouldn't be. It should not be. It shouldn't be encouraged as funny because there's nothing funny about suicide or rape or dead babies. Yeah. There isn't.
Yeah.
Well, then it comes to the point that you're basically asking to ban someone because he made a tasteless joke. That's a bit far.
I mean, I get your point.
Whether you feel on whether, on how hurt you are as the person who's on the receiving end.
But
and that's also why I think it's important on who says something to somebody. Because I think the something per se can be problematic, but
you also
in a way, certain words are not to use for certain people, while other people can use them if used correctly.
You also have to know your audience, though, and if it's gonna offend them. Like, I wouldn't go out and say to a black person, knowing it's offensive, saying, "Hey, nigger, what's up?" Like, I wouldn't do that because it's
that went
offensive.
far fast.
Or, okay, here's another example. I had a stillborn baby in 2012. This is the reason I don't find dead baby jokes funny. If you knew that I had a stillborn, would you come up to me and tell me a dead baby joke, knowing that?
No.
Exactly. So you have to know your audience and what's going to offend them. And if you're purposely saying something that's going to offend somebody, then there's a fine line between freedom of expression and being blatantly ignorant.
Ignorant, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're talking about banning things that offend people. And unfortunately, it's going to go both ways. So people...
We're talking about banning things that are inciting hatred. Like, some things...
I mean, inciting hatred is a really, really hard thing to define on the internet.
For example...
Like, that's my...
For example...
For example?
The civil rights... That protest they had in front of that civil rights monument, I can't remember what state it was in, just a couple of months ago, where that woman got run over by a neo-Nazi who, slammed her in. She got run over by a car and slammed into that.
Was that the Andrew Jackson statue?
Yes. So, Donald Trump saying it was okay because Nazis are allowed to protest too.
Well, they are, if unfortunately. Crash a car into someone. Jesus. Yeah, that's not a form of...
Well, they are, but it's not... But neo-Nazism is inciting hatred. Yeah. You're literally inciting hatred purposely.
Well, to quote him, he said there was violence on both sides, which was actually true.
And I'm not denying that, but he also said that the Nazis had permission to be there and the people protesting them didn't.
Well, the neo-Nazis actually did request permission from the police to go and do that rally, and the police said yes. So,
but it doesn't.
The protesters didn't.
The thing is neo-Nazis are inciting hatred, and that's why they had protests.
I agree with that, and I see where you're going. And that's another one of the fine lines. They applied for a permit to have a demonstration. That's
I mean, I
hard. That's
hate
hard
having to be the devil's advocate
right.
here, but
That's
it
hard to
has
say.
to
If
be
they
done.
applied, I don't even know where to even begin with that one. I see both sides, and I see
But
it's inciting
kind of my
hatred,
point
but they
there.
have the permit to be there to do that, and it's like which way are you
Where
weighing?
does it?
Which way are you weighing? That's I get
Where
it.
does it stop?
Right.
There has to be a line where
Where's the line?
it's
Exactly.
not okay.
I mean, when you're flat out trying to go inside a race riot, yeah, you should go and get that post taken down and you should be banned. But there should be a very, very fine line that is very clearly defined in the terms of service before I would agree to,
Right.
You got peaceful
silencing.
demonstration, and then you got right.
Yeah.
And in respect to that comedian, I have a problem with comedians being arrested or taken in front of a jury for making jokes, even if they are in crass taste and not in the best taste, because that also sets a precedence of it's no longer freedom of speech anymore, and you're taking our right to free speech away.
Yeah,
Is cyberbullying okay? And whatnot? No, that's not okay. Like, cyberbullying, they should take more seriously because people have committed suicide when it comes to cyberbullying.
Yeah.
There have been kids that have killed themselves when it comes to cyberbullying. So that part of it isn't okay, but to take a person's right to make a joke on a stage in front of people that are probably they probably know that this person is going to make a crass joke or two, that's not okay. Like, that is really infringing on freedom of speech rights. Because that person's intent is not to incite hatred in somebody or incite hate riots. It's literally for people to go out and have a good time and laugh.
Yeah, I think with comedians it's difficult because comedians should criticize. But in Germany, sometime either last year or the year before, a comedian got accused by Erdogan, the Turkish premier minister,
Erdogan,
like that. Because of how Böhmermann talked about him, the comedian, and literally that was like in the Austrian and in the German news for weeks because it was such a big deal. I mean, literally, this was about freedom of speech and the two countries and their relationship and the relationship between the two countries. It was a hot issue. But in the end, he didn't get accused because Germany kind of said like no. But it was really a bit like it was a complicated issue.
Oh crap! How do I change it?
I mean, normally when it comes to freedom of speech things, I'm a little bit more lax in it, but that's also because I've been having to deal with my friends basically verbally fighting on Facebook about Donald Trump for the past year and a half. So I'm basically kind of done trying to moderate things.
So, like, the thing with Donald Trump is he is the only president within the last, 50 years to incite so much divisiveness in a country. Like,
I would have to say no, because Lyndon Johnson trying to go into the Civil Rights Act actually became very divisive in the South.
But he wasn't in the last 50 years.
He was.
Wasn't he in
1968,
Johnson, yeah,
2018.
Nixon,
Oh.
Johnson, yeah.
He was
Well-
exactly 50 years ago.
Okay.
40 years.
That and there's also Nixon, Jimmy Carter, Reagan, Gerald
Yeah.
Ford.
But they weren't like, they didn't create as much divisiveness as Donald Trump has. Like, there's literal race wars happening right now that have not happened since the civil rights movement.
There's not race wars happening right now.
Oh, I would beg to differ. I would beg to differ. The South is really, 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 like, not okay right now.
No, not much has changed from the Obama presidency.
When you have people calling into NPR and saying we need to go back to the times when they were allowed to lynch people and lynch black people, and the 1920s have to happen again when people were allowed to beat their wives,
Yes, that happened under Bush and Obama too.
it may not
That's
be
been a thing.
physical.
They're being
but, like,
emboldened by Trump right now, is what.
Yes, they're
Right.
being
They're being
emboldened.
by him.
under Obama or George W. Bush, as much as I hated Bush Jr., I don't remember one time hearing on NPR somebody saying that. Like, that disgusted me when I heard that.
I mean,
when
I've
I
heard
was
it.
going through Alabama. It was awful. I had to turn. That was the first time I've ever turned NPR off in my entire life. I was so mad.
Yeah, his trash talking essentially is what it is emboldening people, making
Oh,
them
yeah, of
feel that
course.
it's okay to talk that way and act that way. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, more so
Yeah, he's
than any other
emboldening
president
people,
in the
but
past. It's happening more so with what he's saying.
And when
because
I go to
nobody in the past has
Washington,
said,
when I go to Washington,
Yeah.
D.C., and I see pictures where it says Trump has sexually assaulted over 20 women and over 75% of the USA wants Trump to be investigated, so please, governors, investigate this president. When I see that on every single garbage can and light posters that actually say this as I'm getting out of my car, I've never before felt uncomfortable in a place like ever. I walked up to a police officer in Washington who pulled a gun on me because I was asking a question about one of their buildings. And my husband went to Washington like a few years ago, and the attitude in that city was completely different. The White House was more approachable. You couldn't get in within like 10 feet of the fencing of the White House without having a guard hold their gun in their holster and say, "Don't come any closer." They literally had guards every 5 feet on that fence, and my husband took a picture, and I could I'll like post it to you guys after, but you can feel, even in the picture, the attitude is completely different as opposed to what it was even 6 or 7 years ago.
right.
Well, that's just because we have a bad president. Doesn't mean that we're going to be in the risk of a civil war. It's not as bad as you think. We just have a bad president.
That's bad wording, but like, I have never seen people be so vocal about their divisiveness about a president as I have with Trump. Like,
Well,
yeah,
that's just
people-
because you haven't experienced a president as bad as Trump.
Yeah, people hated Bush, but they were not as vocal about their hatred for Bush. Yeah, people disagreed with Obama, but they were not as bad about vocalizing how much they disagreed with Obama, because there was still that respect of, he's the leader of our country, so we're not really going to question their decisions. But now, Trump doesn't have that respect, and it's changed. The whole attitude of respect for your leader in your country has completely changed. And it's becoming a situation where, like, they feel more comfortable voicing their concerns and questioning the things that their president does. Like my husband and I grew up in he grew up in the United States in Texas, and I grew up here in Canada. And our country, we've always been allowed to question, like we've always been taught it's okay to question our leaders and stuff. And I don't believe a lot of stuff that happens in my government. I'm always questioning it. And my husband's like, why do you do that? That's not okay. He's our leader. Why do you have to question everything that he does or say, is this truth, or accuse him of lying because he grew up that you don't question your president. You don't question the government because of the fact that they're your leader. They deserve much more respect than a normal person.
If you don't question it, I mean, they're supposed to be listening to you, not deciding their own right. So that's the other side of that.
And that's what I said to my husband.
Yeah, America's been like this to most of our presidents because of Nixon. Honestly, with the Pentagon Papers and Watergate. Yeah, we have a good reason to not be super trusting of our presidents anymore.
But you still have the respect not to question their decisions publicly, whereas Canadians don't have that. If we see something wrong, like a lot of Canadians believe 9/11 was a false flag, and I hate to bring that up, and it sounds disrespectful, but a lot of the things surrounding 9/11 just don't make sense in a lot of ways.
Not only Canadians, like I think entire world thinks that except the United States.
So a lot of people won't question that because it would be disrespectful. But I'm just trying to say from the perspective of people who aren't Americans, but as the perspective of somebody who has been taught in school that it's okay to question things that don't make sense. The attitude in the States is shifting to what I've always, like, to me this is not a surprise that people are questioning Donald Trump's decisions. To me, this is normal. This is what you're supposed to do because your government is supposed to work for you, not against you.
Right.
You pay their paycheck.
I think there's also another issue playing into this, and this is social media. Mm-hmm. Because we literally have now a whole generation who grew up with social media and knows how to use it and what to do and not to do in general.
Right, and I grew up in the generation where I was before social media, but I also had to get used to social media because social media came around when I was like 18. Facebook came around when I was like 18, 19, 20 years old. I think I was like 22 or something when Facebook came on the market. And so this is a new thing for me and my generation to see so much hatred publicly because hatred only happened behind closed doors. Like,
right, you weren't.
See, that's different because I am a millennial, and so for me, while I personally didn't have like a mobile phone until I was 14, and so like was totally shut out. But I see it, the people who are as old as me, we grew up with this, and it's so different because I don't know how to explain, but imagine, like, think about the march today. Literally, all of the U.S. marched, and there were like, I don't know how many sister marches across the globe. And this in a way, that's just the new perspective and the new dimension that wasn't possible before.
And I mean, Robert can correct me if I'm wrong because he's from the same generation I am. The internet didn't come into my house until I was like in grade 10. So in 1997 is when we had the internet come in. So I'm more old school in that. Like, I talk about it in public, and my husband's like, "Don't do that. That's not okay. That, like, why do you do that?" And that's literally because that's how and he's older than me, but he still says it's not polite to talk about politics in person with somebody. But for me, I learned, that's literally how I learned to deal with like political issues, is to talk about it.
And yeah, for me, the internet wise, 97, but I'm going back to dial up between my friend down the street, back and forth. I'm linking the two computers together. I had internet until
I had dial up too.
So, but
I grew up with the internet, so I'm used to seeing all of this discourse online all the time.
Yeah.
So how many of us...
It's just usually not on Facebook, but it's always around, and it's usually this vocal.
How many of us in the OSS chat, like not just us, but how many of us in the OSS chat are not millennials? Like, I don't consider myself a millennial because I was born at the very cusp beginning of it. Like, I was born in 84.
I was born in the last year of it.
I'm the Zennial, like the Generation X millennial combined component.
I don't think there are, like, I definitely think there are some.
So is Agnes, are you from the millennial generation, or are you from the Gen X millennial combine generation, or are you Gen X generation?
Define millennial, by the way.
Millennial is anybody 1987 to 2010.
Yeah. So.
Then yes, I'm a millennial.
I was born in communism in Poland, so in 80s.
Yeah, but what year in the 80s? Because, like, millennial starts in 1987.
So I was 70. I was. Go ahead.
87? No, 84 I am. So.
Earl, you and I are the same age. So you're the Zennial part of it. You're the because Gen X and millennial turned into Zennial for years 1984 to 1987 because they fit in both generations. So Robert is a Gen Xer.
No,
He's like the original.
I was born in 73.
My dad's technically a baby boomer.
Yeah, my dad.
He's born in 60.
My dad is a baby boomer too. My mom.
My parents are baby
My
boomer.
mom's Gen X.
Well,
my mom is Gen X too because she was born in. My mom was born in the very beginning of the Generation X in 1966, which started it started in 1965. So
Gen X started in 1961.
No, it started in 1965.
That's not what I learned.
I don't know. I never heard.
Regardless, my dad is a different generation than even my mom. Like, my mom and I are the same Gen X generation. And, like, even my sister, I wouldn't consider my sister a Zennial, as they call it, because she's more millennial like her thought patterns and everything are more millennial generations. But I am more old school. I think that social issues should stay off the internet and in topic in person.
I think there shouldn't be any bars on where you talk about social issues. I think it should be everywhere, so then it's always discussed.
I mean, yes. Don't get me wrong. Social media can be good for a lot of things, but there is so much false information because you have so much information at your fingertips. Google can be a bad thing. Like, it can be a really bad thing because you can get so much false information as opposed to factual information.
You can also get false information from news sources on TV and in person.
I don't trust Fox News, just so you know.
I'm seeing every single news source, even CNN and NPR. They